What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. Happy New Year, happy holidays, and welcome to 2025. This is going to be our last episode of Season 2 of Salty Runback. We have a couple of fun things that we have planned for the upcoming new year, but this is a good way to wrap up 2024 and look forward into the upcoming season. So we decided to do one last episode here before we take another couple of weeks off and get started with looking forward to the new year. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Hawk. Hawk, we got a fun episode planned for everybody today. How are you doing?
Grapes, I'm doing all right. I see what you did there. Wrap up 2024. This is Salty Runback wrapped. Yeah, it's been a minute. It'll probably be a minute as well as we're sort of ramping up into Season 3. We thought we'd do one last episode, though, to just sort of take a look back at the incredible year we had both here with this channel and then just overall in North American Developmental. I feel like after all of the chaos that was 2023, Grapes, I would say things kind of looked up a little bit this year, at least in terms of Tier 2 and Tier 3 in many aspects.
We had our ups and downs for sure, but I think overall, looking back, I was happy with how the year went for the most part. There's obviously things that, we wish could have gone better, specifically in some of the spaces that we ended up working in, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, still very grateful to be able to have this opportunity. Grateful for all of you guys that are watching. If you aren't already, please subscribe to the YouTube, like this video and everything like that. I know we don't do these shout outs too often, but just notice that, as we were going through some of our numbers, that some of them could go up a little bit more going into 2025. So to ring in the new year, how about a sub and things like that? Leave a comment down below as well. But Hawk, we're gonna do things the old-fashioned way again here. We got some headlines covering some of the biggest news during this holiday break, and then in our part 2, we're going to be discussing again some of the biggest stories of 2024, some of the biggest players, and some of our personal accomplishments wrapped up for all of you guys. So without further ado, let's get into the headlines here, starting off with some of the new rosters that were announced going into the 2025 season. The first of which, not actually an NACL roster, but an OQ roster. Nightmare, a new addition who are going to be competing in the OQ, whatever that ends up looking like for 2025. Now, Nightmare is an organization that has already competed in things like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, but they are going to be running a haymaker of a roster fully composed of Dokla, Kenvi, Bradley, Meech, and Breezy. So a lot of ex-CLG players in here, a lot of ex-Wildcard Red players in here, a lot of UST synergy coming in as well, as Kenvi and Bradley were both a part of that team and will be competing with them moving forward. So the question here, Hawk, is there any world where this Nightmare roster is not one of the big favorites to make it into the NACL during this Open Qualifier?
I mean, Grapes, you kind of already alluded to it. Yes, this is not an NACL roster in terms of where they'll be playing to start out with, but I mean, this is one of the biggest bombshells of the offseason. We phrased the headline in this way down below for a reason. Are Nightmare the favorites to make the NACL or more? Because I don't think there is a single world where a roster gets announced that is on paper stronger than this for the upcoming qualifier, right? Because you also have to remember there's going to be 7 other teams with completed rosters for the NACL proper, and we expect that all of those, will also be reasonably strong. And I think Nightmare, not only will they be well above, the Tier 3 circuit, but I think there's a legitimate conversation that they are contending for an NACL title. Dokla and Kenvi playing together. Meech and Dokla both back from the LCS. I mean, having gotten that experience, they're 2 of the best prospects that we have. Kenvi, Bradley, Breezy all have been at the top of their roles at respective times. This roster is, absolutely insane. And I know we were expecting strong rosters for this qualifier, right? Because there are only going to be 7 complete NACL rosters at this given moment. But I just think about how CCG was considered this bombshell, and that was basically just because they had Bradley and Instinct, right? And Yukino as well. But now we've got Kenvi, Bradley, Meech, Breezy, Dokla. This team is insane. This team is simply insane. You also mentioned it. A lot of them have played together before in the past too. I think this is the team to beat off the bat.
You say 7 teams, but there is another team with a purple and black logo in the shape of a skull that is no longer part of the league. That's Cincinnati Fear. So
It's true.
now
You're
there's
right.
actually only
It's-
6 teams in. However, if you told me
Point
going
still
into this
stands.
offseason,
Point still stands.
if you told me going into the offseason that this was Cincinnati Fear's roster, I'd immediately be like, yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah,
This
that
is
makes
an
sense.
NACL caliber roster that could be at the top of the table. So it's hilarious that they're going to be competing in the Open Qualifiers. Now, they're obviously is like a little bit of a gamble that a team like an organization like Nightmare plays by competing in this Open Qualifier instead of potentially buying that Cincinnati Fear spot. I don't know if that was ever presented to them in any way or like that, but the reward is that you won't have to pay that fee to buy in if there even is one. And of course, you'll have a pretty easy pathway to qualifying in, supposedly, because I agree with you with the sentiment of don't think it's really possible for another roster to appear in this OQ, just because I imagine that these guys actually spent a decent amount of money on their roster. That was generally the rumors of what this was looking like.
I mean, they
going
would have
in.
had to, yeah.
Yeah.
Why would Dokla and Meech not go play
exactly.
for someone else?
And the other thing is that, I think the only situation that there is a roster that could compete is if there's like a Los Ratones Part 2 where Double Lift, Meteos, and Sneaky all come back and play, and somehow like maybe people could argue that roster is better. They bring up a lot of ex-former pros. That has not become like a rousing theory. A lot of the big influencer teams or the big like star teams are over in Europe, unfortunately. But that is the only situation where I see this roster potentially being outgunned in terms of sheer star power.
And prevailing theories are that we're only 2.5 weeks away from the start of the split as well. So, I would be really surprised if a roster stronger than this ends up coming up, just because I think we would have heard about some player, whether a literal player or a player meaning an organization or something, getting into the game. It feels like that just has not happened. I feel like if Ludwig was to start a team. He
just hit platinum. He's fully locked
but,
in on League of Legends.
But if the influencer team was to happen, I feel like we would have heard some hype around that by this point, just given that there's only 2.5 weeks until the season. Probably not going to happen.
My only pushback on that is because we don't know the format yet. Maybe people. There's obviously not a deadline to submit a team yet, and so
That's
maybe
true.
There's always the potential of something kind of forming
if
at the
Double
last
Lift,
minute.
Sneaky, and Meteos and whoever the fuck decide to start a team like a week before, are they even going to be better than this team? Probably not, right? Because surely this team's
I don't
scrimming.
think so.
I mean, Grapes, I'm going to just throw the blood in the water here immediately to generate hype around this roster. I think this is on paper the strongest tier 3 roster we have ever seen. At least that's not seen in hindsight, right? Like we can look back at 2021 100X or whatever, or what was it, 2020 100X, and be like, wow, that team was so stacked. But I think at least as far as like the names as we know them coming into the season, this is surely the strongest team we've ever seen at this level of play.
I would give you Solafide, which had Dokla, Winnie, Tuesday, Zazel, and I forget their ADC, Apollo on that team, or Wildcard in 2021 as well, which was Dokla, Winnie, Bradley, Arrow, and Daption. So I think those are the two that can
like,
that could compete.
was Winnie considered like that guy back in 2021 though? Like he had Academy experience, but he was not
Academy finalist, top 2 NACL, or top 2 basically Academy at that point.
That's true.
So
that's true.
That I think those are the rosters that this could be compared to.
At the very least, this is stronger than the native gaming roster that we saw kind of try to do the same thing last year, right?
Yes.
Like, or 2 years ago, really.
2 years
at this
ago.
point, this is. I think the expectations for this team are higher than that they've ever been, and you're right that they're taking a risk by playing in tier 3. But I really think the only obstacle in their way is don't be lackadaisical, don't be complacent, don't disrespect tier 3, because we have seen that there could be great players at this level. However, I mean, yeah, they should be the team to beat.
Better than Luminosity? Better than Dragonsteel?
I think there's a legitimate conversation to have. Better? No. Like, I'm not going to say better, but I think it is at least a conversation.
Yeah. And we still don't know all the full rosters for NACL just yet. So as we get to see more of those and maybe some of the other OQ teams form, we'll get a better idea of what that ends up looking like. But
I mean, it was just on our last episode we said those other two would be the teams to beat, and the Nightmare came out with this. So yeah, we'll see.
Two LCS, two players that were in LCS last year 3 total LCS veterans, other people that were a bit top of their roles historically. Like, very, very solid team. I'm very excited to watch them. Hey everyone, a quick break from the episode to let you know that Salty Runback is looking for sponsors for the 2025 season. We had a great 2024 with our podcast and our production ventures in the NACL and CLL, and we're looking to do more of that in 2025, but we're going to need your help. We have some really exciting projects that we want to get funded, but we need some sponsors to help get that wheel going and make sure that we can put out the best content that we can in the NACL CLL space. So if you are a marketing director at a company who is interested in partnering with us, or if you know anybody who could be interested as well, send us an email at saltyrunbackpod@gmail.com or DM one of me or Hawk on Twitter at SpeedyGrapes or at HawkCast. Thank you very much, and let's get on with the episode. Let's move on to our next headline, though, as we'll talk about a team that is already in the NACL and is not necessarily considered one of the top favorites. Even though maybe this news broke a while ago, we haven't recorded an episode since the roster was announced. But Blue Otter announced that they're not going to be making any changes for this upcoming season. They'll be fully running it back, something that we don't often see in the developmental space. So happy for them. Quacker, Music, Samikin, Levitate, and Rovex all making it back to this team. I believe Thin Uncle Phil still in there as a coach. Another one of these fan favorite teams running it back for another split. They made it all the way to the top half of the standings last summer, Hawk. Is that the expectation this time around, or would you be, or is that too much to ask for a team that still is not the most experienced, even though they have gotten another split under their belt?
It's a really interesting question because I think Blue Otter vastly surpassed everyone's expectations last split. And just to sort of talk a little bit before I get into the question itself of, how well do I think they'll do? There were a lot of rumors surrounding this team in the offseason after they did surpass those expectations with a lot of young players, a lot of great talent, right? A really strong coach, then Uncle Phil. I think him coming back is equally as important as the 5 players coming back, keeping that whole structure in place for them. They even have brought Sneezes out of retirement again, I believe, for this team. There was rumors that the whole team was going to be bought out by another organization. There was rumors that they were just going to get vultured, like say CCG did after the promotion tournament. And none of those happened. And I think Blue Otter should be very happy. But I think the players should be happy. I think the organization should be happy. I think the fans should be happy that this team is staying together. I really don't know what to expect from this team because they clearly earned their spot in NACL last split. They earned their keep, as it were, beating Disguised in an electric 5-game series to make top 6 last playoffs. Samikin, Levitate proving their worth. But Grapes, I do think, despite all of that, this roster does still feel like superstars in the making for them. So I'm curious to see how high they can fly, but I don't think of them as this bona fide contender just yet, despite everything that they were able to do last split. So I think the question really just is, where is their ceiling? We haven't seen it yet. It could be really high, but it also, they could be approaching it, right? We just don't know.
I think one of the biggest things that we heard from Blue Otter is that, from whether it was their coaches or their players, is that they felt that week after week they were continuing to improve and
the players will actively tell you they sucked for the first 6 weeks of the split,
and I think they're going to have a leg up this time around with running a lot of their players back. I think them and I guess MU, maybe partly Luminosity because they have a lot of Shopify players coming back, but this is going to be an advantage for them this time around, having a lot of the same players together, and the fact that they're going to all hopefully continue their growth that we saw from them, specifically from the rookies from last year in Samikin and Levitate. I think those are the biggest stars on those teams. I posted at the end of their run last year that if any top-tier NACL team picked those 2 up as a core, they'd be already on a really good pathway, and Blue Otter was able to retain them. And so I think that overall, a lot to look forward to for this team. They're not necessarily in the same tier as the other, contenders that we mentioned, whether that be Luminosity, Nightmare, potentially if they make it in, or Dragonsteel. But I do think that they're likely going to end up in that tier below. Now, we haven't seen many of the other rosters other than those announced yet, but just given the other talent that is still floating around, combined with the fact that these guys are going to have another split under their belts, and they're not the same players as what we were expecting of them at the start of the summer split, that I think is going to mean that the expectation should be to finish at a similar level, if not overperform where they were in the summer split.
I think the biggest thing for Blue Otter is I don't want to see a sophomore slump, right? You know, we don't want it to be the kind of situation where they peaked at the right time, oh my God, and then they fall off and then they're not as good again. Because I do still think like some of the players individually could be considered weaker than their counterparts, right? So I think the most important thing for them, they don't need to be a contender to win the NACL, but I don't want to see them in danger of getting relegated. And I think if they can do that, they should be very happy with their season, and these players can continue to grow, and really chase their pro dreams.
Yeah, I'm specifically hoping that we'll get that next step taken by one or two of those players to the, being a part of that conversation of potentially being in the promotion talks for Tier 1 at the end of 2025. And that I think will be a goal successful for Blue Otter if they're able to achieve that.
I think if Samikin can continue to play consistently, which is something that he struggled with in the past, unbelievably clutch player, which is something you can't teach, by the way. But if he can continue to play consistently game in and game out, I think he's one of the most electrifying talents we have at this level. So, we'll see.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next headline here. Again, going back in time a little bit to the end of 2024, but the ACL, Aegis Champions League champions, were crowned at the end of last year. Congratulations to CCG Esports, not CCG Glorp, their sister team, who they took down in a 5-game set. CCG Glorp ended up becoming a good chunk of the Dragonsteel team. Zamudo, Scary Jerry, and Psycho all in there. So big win for CCG Esports proper. Now, of course, CCG in the NACL for 2025, but they have not announced their full roster. The ACL winning team, Crimson, Kryra, Aljun, Array, and Trevor. So a couple of those pieces that were a part of that 2024 season, but not all the way there. With their recent success of winning the Prestige Premier Tier 3 event of the offseason, would you be mad if CCG just ran back this entire roster for the upcoming season?
It's a really interesting question, too, because no, but also I wouldn't love it. I think at the very least, Crimson, Kryra, and Trevor have both with their 2024 seasons and then also with this ACL run have definitely proven that they're NACL caliber talents. I think Crimson and Kryra in particular, two of the younger up-and-comers that we really have. I know there was a lot of question marks, Grapes, for both of us, for Crimson in particular. I think he, even if he's not like the strongest top laner in the league right now or anything like that, I think he's played at a level where I would be more than happy to see him back in the NACL. I think any team should be proud to build around him, try to get him to his dreams of playing against his brother on the LTA stage. I think these two players, CCG should hold on to. It's in particular Array and Trevor, obvious NACL talents as well. To me, though, the jury is still a little bit out on Aljun. We've seen some pretty high level performances here and there over the years, but Grapes, I do think we have never really considered him among the top echelon of tier 3 mid laners. So a really big win for him on this team, but I do wonder, like, I think if it was this roster of 5, I think the 4 players that I mentioned, NACL talents, but not necessarily top echelon, and then a mid laner that I'm a little bit suspect on, I do think I would have them in relegation territory on my power rankings. Not that they would get relegated, but I think they could do better.
Definitely a fair argument there. Specifically about, Aljun, who was somebody that we were super excited about even, when we first started Salty Runback at the start of 2023, as being somebody that we could look at to continue to make big steps. He was on, I think it was Zenigma, then it was She's Chasers in the summer split, but kind of didn't have the best 2024 season.
It just
so
feels
I'm glad
like he's never taken that next step to really contest like the best at tier 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, his 2024, I don't think necessarily went the way he wanted it to either. So I'm glad that he was able to wrap things up on a very high note and
Yeah,
hopefully put himself in a good position for
Definitely.
25. Definitely would love to see Crimson and Cryer specifically run it back. And if Array and Trevor are down to stick around there, I know they're I think playing collegiate together as well.
Dude, Trevor made it all the way through a promotion tournament this time. That's character development.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, if they want to run, if they really think that this is solid synergy and they want to run it back, I would think having that ACL championship would be a fun narrative to take
Agreed.
us into the next season. Specifically, like what does the top of that league, which had a ton of NACL talent in it, what would they look like in the NACL as a full roster of 5? Is there room for changes and improvement? Certainly, but it just depends on what the rest of the talent out there looks like.
I wouldn't be upset, right? Like if they said this was their roster, I'd be like, cool. But could it be better? Maybe. I do think 5 strong players, though, 4 of them being up and comers is cool.
Yeah, no, I think this would definitely be a fun roster. I would be rooting for them to do well if they were competing this upcoming season. That's all the kind of the roster news that we got in tier 2. I guess the one, like, this is our maybe intermission headline here. Apex Mission Impossible, they announced their roster. 4 of the 5 repeating, with 5 Mini joining in the mid lane here to join alongside Decoy, Low Jazz, and Baz and Pocus. Any quick 1 to 2 sentence thoughts on that team?
5 Minis in the exact same position that I feel like Toasty and Samikin were at the start of last year. Really curious to see if he can live up the hype to the hype, because I think Samikin and Toasty had high expectations surrounding them and actually managed to generally surpass them, which is very, very impressive. So we'll see if 5 Mini can do the same. Otherwise, more Canadians playing together. I mean, Apex, they always know what they're about, and I really respect that. Do I think that they're going to be contending for an NACL spot? No, probably not. But I think that's a good team, and I'm very excited to watch them play.
They're always a very solid middle of the pack team, top 8-ish or so.
They will be annoying, right?
They will certainly be a threat to anybody. And depends on what the rest of the field looks like, but we could see a situation where they're in that conversation. Not 100% sure once we get to the OQ. Speaking of the OQ, let's move on to our next headline here, as we're still waiting for full details of what this upcoming tournament is going to look like. As we mentioned earlier on in the show, with the removal of Cincinnati Fear from that list of 7 teams, there's now 4 open spots to join the Challengers League once they start up in, I believe, March or April. The OQ format has not been announced, but I believe the general takeaway is that it'll be different from what we've seen in the past, specifically with the notion that anybody can join, anybody can sign up and play. And of course, it probably can't last too long, as of course we got to start things probably towards the end of January and make sure things are wrapped up before that international tournament takes place in Lowell Park, I believe in March. So this is kind of our playground to brainstorm a little bit, Hawk. If you had full control over this OQ, what would your ideal format be to create the best competitive environment, the most entertaining environment that would get 4 great teams into the Challengers League for the next season?
And as you mentioned, it needs to wrap up by early March, right? We need to have this in place for the NACL season. And then not only that, something we have had heavily rumored to us dating back to I think it was like LCS finals. I was talking to Tim Takar and he was kind of talking to me about this. Riot's goals for this qualifier are to have them be a truly open qualifier. So we're going to sort of seemingly move away from the 32 team selection into like very structured tournament towards like EGL Summer Splash kind of open qualifier, right? Where you can just sign up, play, and I mean, obviously there will still only be a handful of really serious teams that are in the conversation, but the option is there. So first of all, I am really curious to see how many teams actually sign up. Typically for the tier 3 qualifiers that Grapes, you and I have been on the committee on for the last year and a half or so, we would usually see, or 2.5 years even. Wow, it's been a while. Okay, regardless, we would usually see about 40 teams sign up. I am expecting more than that if the qualifier is truly open. Like a lot of like the mid lower level university teams, like this is going beyond like the Nuke Hunters, which were always just Purdue University. I mean, I'm talking like sort of like random schools that might have like Diamond Master players. I could see them definitely signing up if they wanted to. Would compete with CeeLo a little bit, so needs to be careful. But I mean, shit, dude, we could put together Quacks, Tim. They've been talking about hitting Masters. They could sign up, bro. Regardless, I'm expecting
Salty Runback joining the OQs.
Oh my god, dude, hard stuck Gasterlow in the OQs.
Yeah, I mean, the real lore goes back to 2021 during that EGL Summer Showdown.
Yes,
where there was a team
AOE.
of, I think it was Rudude,
like Zephyr,
Zephyr, Gordo, like all playing on this
like,
OQ
by
team
the way, all these guys
were
like gold. Like it wasn't
gold
even like the good casters.
Whoa! I think gold is a very respectable rank for casters.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
I think it's actually above average.
It was more respectable back then, at least before Emerald existed, but it was still not impressive.
Okay, well, but let's get back to the question at hand.
Right.
In this hypothetical situation, like what are your must-have? What are your needs for a format of a tournament like this?
Yeah, okay, let's just say hypothetically like 64 teams sign up. I'm really just going to spitball here because you're going to have to do best of ones. And so I'm going to base my idea on like kind of two questions. Or really one big question, because I think a 16-team double elimination bracket to get to the 4 teams would be a good way to go. Completely eschew the GSL, right? That works really well when we're doing like the tournament circuit. You have kind of like multiple chances and stuff, but GSL is very reliant on seeding, and also like it just breaks the tournament into too many things. Whereas a 16-team double elim, that means like the seeding, while it will matter, it doesn't matter nearly as much, right? Because it's double elim. Like, we just need to get 16 of the best teams into a bracket and then let them play it out. And then also, you're not trying to get to a winner, right? You're just trying to get to a top 4, which is why I think 16 is better than, say, 8. You do that over 3 weeks. That leaves about 2 weeks or so to get down to those 16 teams. I've been consuming a lot of Super Smash Bros. Content recently. I've dived down the awesome sauce rabbit hole. Very high quality content. I've never played a lick of competitive Melee in my life, but it's really interesting. And for that, they do a pools system. And I know this is probably going to be really contentious amongst the seeding and committee haters, but I think if there was some way to seed the teams, but not, 1 through X, right? But just into pools, and then based on the pool that you're in, you might have to play 2 teams from pool 1, 2 teams from pool 2, 2 teams from pool 3, whatever, right? And then, your record amongst or your pool, either like it's tiered pools like that, and then you're, based on the number of games you win, you move on, or there could literally just be like there's pool A, pool B, pool C, pool D, or whatever. They each have 10 teams in them. Top 4 advance. I don't know. I'm sure that would be contentious in some way, but ideally the pools are both large enough where there's not one that's obviously stronger than another, and 2, enough teams advance, like 4 teams advancing out of each pool means like, okay, you had plenty of options.
So you're saying
that's kind of where I'm going with my ideas.
You're saying like a best of 1 group stage with like 5 or 6 teams.
Right.
And then the top X amount go into this double elimination bracket.
Either that, or we have like the top 10 teams are in pool 1, next 10 teams are in pool 2, like ACL did, right? That was how ACL did their seeding, where teams are seeded into literal, like the best are pool 1, the worst are pool 4, or whatever.
And they get put into groups.
You have to play. You get randomly seeded to play 2 teams from each pool, and then your record is just like the top 16 teams by record move on. That's another way. I don't know if either of those are terrible ideas.
That's actually very interesting.
But it feels like an efficient way to just sort of like not rely as much on seeding, and then mostly just get 16 of the best teams into a bracket where they can qualify.
Yeah, because if you're like lower ranked by ELO, you'd have to play harder teams, but you still have to win the same amount of games to potentially get in.
And maybe I'm gonna spitball even more. I don't know if there's a way to do this, but I think the argument of should it be seeded by ELO, should it be seeded by like some sort of point system where it's based on like how many tournaments you've played in the past, or should it be seeded by committee? If there were a way to aggregate those 3 metrics into one
That could
big
work, yeah.
metric that actually seeds the teams, I think that would be best, because I totally understand criticisms with the committee, but I am still a defender that the committee is better than the other systems we've seen in the past. So that's what I would say there as well, as far as like initially putting the teams into pools. If like ELO mattered, but also committee mattered.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely all good thoughts. I like the idea of not necessarily having a group stage where you can get like screwed over by having like a tough group or a group of death or a group of life, but kind of randomly seeding teams against each like pool in some way. That could definitely work out. I'm very interested to see what they do, because there's a lot of different ways that they could go with this. Here's my like master plan.
Hit me.
No, well, whatever like amount of teams sign up, we divide them into like different groups of 16 based off of ELO ranking or whatever. So let's say 48 teams sign up, there's 3 groups of 16. If 64 teams sign up, there's 4 groups of 16. If there's like a number in between, you kind of split it up and give different teams buys depending on the different situations.
Purely based on ELO.
I would say purely based on ELO, because I think at that point
that makes me nervous.
If it's that many teams in a group, I think it gets to the point where it's not as big of a deal necessarily. And if it's Swiss, and then what we would do is out of each of those 16 groups, you do best of 1 Swiss to go through each of them. 3 wins gets you in, 3 losses you're eliminated. That creates that would chop the pool like kind of in half or whatever, and you get to a situation where if there were 3 different teams, if there were 3 different pools, you get to, I think it would be 24 teams advancing out, and if it was 64 teams, you get 32, something like that. And then from there, what you would do is you would seed into a modified double elimination bracket. If you finish 3-0 or 3-1, you'd make it into the double elim side. If you finish 3-2, you would go into the single elimination. You'd automatically get seeded into the lower bracket.
Aren't we seeing, though, that with CLOL, that it comes out to odd numbers, though? So it's hard. You can't do that perfectly?
Yes, only in the 32 team Swiss, that is what happens. But in a 16 team Swiss, 4 teams end up being 3-1 or 3-0, I believe, or something like that. Or maybe it's 2-3 and 3. Either way, you create some method where if you do better in the Swiss bracket, you get a double elimination berth, and if you do worse in the Swiss bracket, you get put into the lower bracket immediately. And the way you would have it work, because that is a lot of games that you have to play, is that each round just gets played all at the same time, just like Swiss, where you're not going to be in a situation where you're going to be able to stream all of the games, and so you just have all of round 1 happen at this day, all of round 2 happen this next day, and then you get to the point where you would find your 4 teams that would make it into the bracket. I could see a world where you continue further, or you kind of try to consolidate this even more, and out of each of those pools of 16, you just you create like an 8-team double elim bracket within each of those pools, and then only 1 team gets out. My only problem is that would create a situation where like you could like put yourself into a group of death. Like
I do not want to see groups that like matter more than like qualification. I think.
Yeah, I think like a world where only like one team.
Yeah.
I think a world where only like 1 team out of like the whole group makes it out. That creates like group of death stuff. I think you want to try to keep things as sparse as possible, where you
like,
allow a lot of teams to get in.
So it seems to be, first of all, Grapes, you're a brave man for suggesting Swiss again. My suggestion, I very deliberately moved away from Swiss. Make teams play at all skill levels, and then we'll see. But I respect that. Seems like the main takeaways, though, are segregating the teams into groups of some kind early on, just to sort of get down to this double elimination bracket. But double elim should be the way, because I do think it's much less reliant on seeding, and I do think it'll create the most hype for actually qualifying teams into the NACL.
Or at least like a modified double elim. Where at least some teams get double elim. Like
some style of double elim.
Yeah, if you need to shorten it up and have some teams like start in the lower bracket, that happens in other playoff brackets.
At the very least, if it's a 16-team double elim, I was like thinking about it too. When you only need to qualify 4 teams, you remove like the last like 7 matches or something.
Yeah, like the crazy gauntlet at the end.
Yeah. So like you could easily do that in 3 weeks. I'm sure a modified 24 team double elim you could do in 3 weeks as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that since it's going to be this big open format, it's not going to be a situation where all the games get streamed on some primary channel. Maybe if there is a stream, it'll be like there's going to be like 7 or 8 games probably happening at a time, and maybe whatever mainstream exists, if there is one, we'll cover maybe 1 or 2.
Maybe this brings us into our 5th headline, which is our NA Dev New Year's resolutions. Grapes, New Year's is such a great time to make resolutions to better ourselves for the future. And as everyone knows, North American Developmental has a lot of ways that it could better itself, particularly surrounding streaming. So one good resolution, I think, for North American Developmental League of Legends could be make sure you at least stream the qualification matches, right? Those ones at the end of the double elimination bracket. Those are the ones that are going to generate the most hype. And maybe while we're on the subject, stream CLIL Top 32 and also have in-person finals again.
So those are you just answered the question right off rip.
Yeah,
those are
sorry.
your resolutions.
I just fucking I both segued and stole it entirely. But surely you've got something.
I love that they're all broadcast focused. That's very, not self-centered, but a very, making sure you're looking out for yourself kind of thing.
I like to have work, but also okay. It's not entirely selfish. Like these games deserve to be
good
streamed
for the community. 100%. No, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah. But also, overall, I'm really broke, guys. So
no,
please.
I do think at least having some stream of tier 3 is will be important. Specifically those qualification matches. I hope there's at least something. I hope my resolutions for NA Dev, I guess number 1 would be making sure that we're uplifting our community. And making sure we all know we're kind of all in the same boat. And I hope that Riot is able to, if they're not able to fully fund different things like broadcast initiatives and things like that, at least find a way to highlight the different community members that are putting in, maybe volunteer effort or things like that, and making sure that they are all spotlighted in some capacity. I think Rallycry did a decent job of that last year when not all of the qualifiers could be streamed, and we're able to highlight a lot of their community, those community streams. I hope we see even more of that, especially in this more open circuit in Tier 3 specifically. I also hope that, the NACL broadcast sticks around as well, and that we get a ton of fun promotion from Riot about the NACL, because now more than ever that space becomes super important. I don't want a situation where we go to the promotion tournament at the end of the year and fans of the LTA or whatever are hearing about these random teams, or hearing about Luminosity or or Dragonsteel or whatever other team comes in for the first time. I think that it needs to be a situation where we are trying to increase that level of convergence between Tier 1 and Tier 2 early in the season, so that by the end of the season, those stakes just become even higher.
Yeah, the leagues are more interconnected than they've ever been. I mean, for the first time in 8 years, there's a direct line to the top level from amateur, and I think this is a really exciting time in general to be a North American League of Legends fan, at least as far as like from the top down, right? And I really hope we can capitalize on it. Last thing I really have to add, Graves, we were talking about, streams, all that kind of stuff. Even if Riot does not support all the streams, in maybe the way that we wish they do, or that they should, or whatever, however you want to square it, right? Make sure you support your favorite streamers as well, because we really appreciate it.
Yeah, assuming we're your favorites. You got any New Year's resolutions for 2025 personally? Or I'm not normally the person that does a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm not really a New Year's resolution guy, because I'm already perfect and don't need to self-improve.
Yeah.
No, that's a joke. But no, I've never really done New Year's resolutions. I sort of just try to stay self-aware throughout the year instead of only at the end. I will say, Grapes, we are recording currently on January 8th, 2025. It is exactly 1 year to the day since I moved into my apartment in Los Angeles. So perhaps my New Year's resolution is to continue chasing my dreams, because somehow I've made it this far. So shout out to everyone that has been a part of that.
I'm going to try to exercise more. I didn't do enough. I haven't done enough of that in years.
I went to the gym 3 times this year.
That's 3 more times than I did. So congratulations.
That's 3 more times than I did the year before too. So
hey, maybe we can both hold ourselves accountable there
yeah,
in terms of both of our resolutions.
Dude, we could have like a gym episode.
No,
that's a really terrible idea. We're not gonna do that. We are absolutely not gonna do that. I think the last thing, fans.
Yes. So go ahead.
Sorry, I think
we got a whole other section after this. Hawk.
I know. I'm taking too much time, but I think the last thing fans of Salty Runback want to see is 2 skinny twinks trying to lift weights.
Come on. Yeah, maybe in the future we'll see. Lots of further content to explore. But speaking of, that's going to do it for our headlines. Let's move on to our final part 2 of the 2024 season, season 2 of Salty Runback, where we take a look back at the year as a whole. It was a fun 2024 for Salty Runback and for North American developmental esports. And as we transition into the next season and prepare ourselves for 2025, what better way to wrap things up than to wrap up our Salty Runback season. So we got like a little spoof on Spotify Wrapped here, where we're going to be covering some of the biggest moments and some of the big stats for the 2024 NACL, as well as, of course, some of our own stuff that we were able to accomplish personally here. Once again, just a huge thank you to anybody who is watching this episode or any of our content over the past year or two, and we really hope you stick around for what is in store moving forward, Hawk. And I think overall we're just very grateful for having the opportunity to use this platform and be one of the premier places to get news about this space that we care so deeply about.
First of all, Grapes, you had such a beautiful way with words in that intro, saying wrapped like 3 times. I really appreciated that.
Thanks.
But yeah, I mean, a big thank you to everyone. We had a lot of fun this year. It's crazy how Salty Runback, we kind of started it at the beginning of 2023 as just sort of like a thing to do. It was just a podcast back then, and now we can say we are legally the owners of a production company, which is really funny. And we did a lot of good stuff. We're gonna take a look back at our year. We're gonna take a look back at the NACL's year. We're not gonna take as much of a look back at the rest of NA Dev's year because the stats were way harder to find. But just know, Tier 3 and CLO, you are just as important to us. We do not pick favorites amongst our children.
Just for this little
just for this slideshow where the stats were accessible. So yeah, let's have some fun. I don't even remember what the second slide is. General stats. This is all again from the NACL season. Grapes, it was a long year, but it was a good one.
So what we did is we went through Oracle Elixir's like intense, insane like game log, and what we did is we found just all the games that were played in the NACL and the promotion tournament for this entire season. And we grabbed all those and we found exactly all these specific details and numbers that you'd maybe find in like a Spotify Wrapped when you get to look at your music listening at the end of the year. So overall, 364 games played, almost 1 per day of the year, comprised of 134 total series between 18 total teams. Out of all those series, we got 5 silver scrapes, and a lot of kills, and a couple of executes as well.
The 23 executes is by far the best stat. That's a lot, I feel like,
I know, it's more than I thought it was going to be. So I think the way we calculated this is we found the number of kills and like the total number of deaths, and we just did a little subtraction.
Right.
Because that's, I think, how Riot tracks the stats. There was a difference of 23. So Barons, towers, things like that. I mean, it's a lot, but when you think about it over the general course of a year, maybe not as much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wonder how many of the executes were to each thing. Like I would imagine like 22 of them were to towers. People don't really get executed by jungle camps and Baron that much unless they're double lift 1v1ing a red buff. So like probably mostly towers, but also only 5 silver scrapes. Absolutely insane. I feel like 2 of them happened in the last promotion tournament as well. So like, right? Like I mean, I can think of like there was.
Hold on. Let me
wait.
I think I'm gonna be able to. I can find this maybe in a second.
We have Blue Otter disguised. We have disguised Dragonsteel, or were they still Maryville in the spring split? I don't even remember. That's 2. We have. Didn't Supernova have a crazy 5-game
Blue
series?
Otter
at
had
some
one,
point?
right? There was that.
No, yeah, I mentioned that one against disguised.
Okay, let me open this up. Actually, I did this a couple days ago. Let's see if it kills my computer.
The giant spreadsheet.
But yeah, overall, a fun year.
Yeah. Last thing I want to point out on
yeah.
this. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was waiting. Go ahead.
Okay. You're filling time. Last thing I want to point out on the slide is throughout the whole year of NACL, we were pretty nearly a kill per minute, which is absolutely glorious. Great job, everybody. I'm really proud of us for that one. But either way, have you found our silver scrapes yet?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. I actually might be wrong on this. It looks like there might have been more. No. I was wrong. No. Total of 10. It was, I believe. Okay, here we go. It was Disguised versus Maryville in the spring.
Yep.
Disguised versus Blue Otter, and then Disguised versus FlyQuest, I believe.
Okay.
Were two of them. And then in the promotion tournament, we had. We also had one between Fear and Team Liquid, I think. And then we had one between Lotus and Pulstar.
I remember that one because I casted that.
Yeah. So those were our 5-game series.
Wow, that's
Disguise
not very many.
Got a lot of them.
Yeah, we had multiple 6 and 8 team double elim brackets the promotion tournament, but I mean I remember NACL was not as close in the playoffs as we typically anticipated with Maryville and FlyQuest and Fear kind of each respectively running away with their splits a little bit, but yeah, regardless, it's a lot of things that happened, Grapes, if we can keep it moving perhaps. Yeah. As there were a lot of things getting slain around the Rift as well. A lot of objectives.
Yeah, so 1,685 dragons, 4,395 towers, 2,800 turret plates, 652 inhibitors, 362 rift heralds, 2,042 total grubs, and 530 barons. So just to do some cross-referencing here, out of the 364 games, 362 times the rift herald was killed. That means twice there was no rift herald killed. And out of all the dragons, Hextech had the most by 4. So your Worlds pick'ems. If you did your Worlds pick'ems for the NACL total season,
I picked Hextech, by the way.
Hextech.
Damn, should have done it for NACL. I'm actually impressed at how not that close the dragon counts are. Hextech and Infernal are very close, but then you have Mountain, Chemtech, and Ocean kind of lagging behind, Cloud bridging the gap, but there's a 40 dragon gap between the others. Also, so many games with multiple barons. We played too many fucking bangers in this league, dude. 530 is insane.
Hey, we're a dev league. We're still learning how to close things out.
I mean, I just think of, again, this is my third time bringing it up this episode, but the Blue Otter Disguised series, there was 3 barons in half of those games. It's outrageous, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is all fun stuff. As a top laner, sad that there wasn't more plates taken, or maybe that is a good amount actually. But
is that your crowning objective as a top laner, tower plates?
That's my favorite. That's my favorite at least. I play a lot of Scion and stuff.
That's fair.
Go demolish, clear waves, things like that. Because turret plates give you gold. Speaking of gold, you can move on to our next slide. A lot of gold was earned throughout the season, a total of over 27 million across all of our players in the 364 games. Some of that was because of minions. 610,000 minions were killed, but not all of it was necessarily spent in the maybe most effective way.
3% of all of the gold earned.
Yeah. Over 1.5 million gold spent on control wards, and the person who spent the most amount on control wards was Team Liquid's Kim Down. You could say he's playing for the team. You could say he's not buying a ton of items after his support item because he bought 1,175 control wards throughout the entire season. That combines to over 88,000 gold throughout the year.
Gotta pump up that vision score, man. Support's gotta have stats somewhere on the sheet. That's a lot of money. Grapes, I'll give you 1 million gold in a briefcase, untaxed in cash right now. Have you heard that before?
Maybe.
The NACL casters like to play that game a lot. It's
that's a
and
lot
then you
of money.
proposition them where I'll give you 1 million gold in a briefcase, untaxed in cash right now, but you have to buy 2 control wards every time you go back to base.
I mean, I'd run out of that money pretty quick, apparently.
I know Kim
so.
Down would take that bet. So.
Yeah, all good fun. I just know that that's a fun little thing that people always track, amount of control wars, and hey, that's a stat that Oracle's Elixir does provide. Let's move on to the total champion stats for the year. Remember, this was our first full year of Fearless, I believe. If I'm not, maybe that's wrong. Maybe was 2023 also Fearless, or I don't know. Either way, true Fearless this time.
No,
at least
23 was not Fearless.
Was not Fearless. Okay.
Because we had true Fearless for summer, and then we had like the fake Fearless for spring. Wait.
See, now I'm getting confused. It might have been full Fearless for all of NACL this year.
No. They definitely changed it for summer split because we were talking about how like Niles suggested the change and everything like midway. We definitely only had like the game 4 and 5 Fearless thing for summer. I'm so sure of that, right?
I think you're right.
I think I'm right. And then we just had, right. Okay.
Well, that actually clears things up a little bit here because if you look at our most picked champions, Nautilus, Cassante, Rel, Varus, for Nectin. I think the number that I pulled was Nautilus was picked like 130
right, everyone's
times.
complaining about handshakes in spring. Sorry, I just epiphanied. Continue.
So I think Nautilus was picked 130-ish times across the 134 series played. But that means that there were probably more times where Nautilus went through because there were also series where each team picked Nautilus once in the spring split. So not necessarily the most interesting stat there, but a lot of tanks here.
I wonder how many of those 11,000 some kills were on Nautili this
probably a lot
this year.
Yeah. And then we got our most banned champions as well, which actually looks very different from our most picked champions, which I guess makes sense because as soon as you pick a champion, like you're not able to ban it. I guess you don't have to ban it the rest of the way. But it looks like Ashe got a lot of attention in the draft phase this year.
Yeah, I wish I could say I'm more surprised by these stats, but honestly, I'm not. All these champions were very good for most of the year. I think Senna's the kind of interesting one where Senna was very broken for a good portion of summer split, but I do think we also have a lot of very dangerous Senna players in the NACL. Like there's something about that champion where I feel like there's multiple players that I can think of that I just don't really want to give Senna to. So maybe for that reason, like I wonder if the ban stats were a little bit higher. Hard to say. A lot of 80 carries though.
Yeah, bot lane prio. I'd imagine, yeah, a lot of those bans towards our very talented 80 carry pool, which we always talk about as being really good. Speaking of, let's move on to some of our player-specific stats here. And I think in general, the name that stuck out the most when looking through all these numbers was actually Sajed, as he ended up at the end of the season with the most kills in 2024, the most minions killed in 2024, and also the most pentakills. He had 2 pentakills throughout the 2024 season. Now, of course, this also likely comes down to the fact that FlyQuest Challengers was playing a lot of games as they made it pretty far into the playoffs every year. But congratulations to Sajed, a guy who had, I think, a very good rookie campaign.
Yeah, that's a lot of kills. 2 pentakills, baby. That's the stat. Like, I feel like some players wait years to get their first ever like pro play pentakill, and Sajed got 2 in his first year in the NACL. That is incredibly impressive. I do think it's funny. We talk about playing a lot of games like Scary Jerry, Lens, Spyrax, all sort of being high up on those kill charts as well. Probably benefiting from that a little bit. Also, Spawn farming up a fucking storm for Team Liquid Challengers apparently. So, that's pretty cool. Array, did he have any pentakills in the tier 3 split itself? Because I wonder. He did, right? Because there was that Ezreal game where he had like he
had a couple of quadras at least in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were pentas specifically, but again, not counting.
But I'm trying to remember if you can count his tier 3 split if he actually gets up to that 2 as well.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but no, Sajed played both splits in the NACL, and so that's why he's up here. Speaking of kills, of course, a lot of kills have to come with a lot of deaths, and unfortunately for one of our favorite players here on Salty Runback, the most killed player in the summer and spring of 2024 was our jungler Winnie. We also have Kenvi very close behind, followed by Kim Down, and then Chime and Toasty at the very end. This, I think, makes a lot of sense. I feel like Winnie's the guy who will take a punch for his team quite often.
Yeah. Winnie, the tank commander. Shout out him, friend of the show. Kim Down shouldn't have spent so much gold on control wards. Maybe he would have lived a few more times. I'm not surprised to see junglers and supports. I do think Toasty high on this list is like slightly alarming. I mean, it's like why is our mid laner dying so much? I do wonder, like, to, you know, what does 6 through 10 look like? Is it just more junglers and supports and Toasty's an outlier, or is there, like, you know, more carries just lurking under the surface that we can't see?
I can do that real quick for you if you want. Let me.
I'm actually, if it's easy to pull up.
When can be Kim Down chime Toasty, and then it was Zamudo actually tied with Toasty. I didn't actually put that.
That's
in there.
somehow not surprising to me.
Philip, Philip right behind him, then Breezy, Shaden, Zyko, Quacker, Roamer, Poom.
Okay,
Diamond.
so there's some other solo laners in there.
Supports and junglers seem to be up there the most, but then you do have some top laners after that, you know, kind of making a presence known.
Top laners are inters though. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, Toasty though, the most in the mid lane by a decent margin.
Excuse me, sorry, I had to sneeze. Yeah, well, it's okay. Toasty rookie split still had a really good a good year though. But shout out Winnie. Someone had to be at the top, and honestly, I wouldn't have wanted to be anyone else.
So learning experience, and
yeah.
as we say.
But moving forward, Grapes, to get those kills, you got to do damage.
This was fun. I like Oracle's Elixir has all these like really random stats. One of them was like total damage dealt. So I literally just added up all the amount of damage for each of those guys. And ended up with Roamer having dealt the most total damage throughout the entire year across all of his games, a total of over 1.75 million damage dealt. Close behind him were Spyrex and Toasty, and then Sajed. Also Surdy making the top 5 here, but no surprise that a lot of mid laners and you know, an ADC down there as well making the cut. And then the best CSD at 10 minutes across the entire league. No surprise, Surdy dominated lane all the time. That's kind of his bread and butter.
That CS differential for Surdy is absolutely nuts. Like, so much higher than everybody else in the league, showing that, you know, even when he was like sort of, I don't want to say struggling, but like, you know, not even super popping off, he's still just getting advantages in the 1v1. I also am kind of disappointed, like, top lane not really playing towards the side lanes at all this year, with Surdy sort of being the lone exception. Top laners, why are we not farming our damage numbers by just like slapping each other up in the top lane all game? I thought that was what you guys do.
Hey,
so,
when it's like Ornn versus Sion, there's not a ton of damage to go around. So
I guess, but like, dude, also those guys are farming grass procs off each other all game. Like, isn't that how you pump those numbers up?
Hey, shout out to Surdy, making it.
Well, that's
up
how
there.
he got up there. He's actually playing a side lane, you know.
Let me take a closer look here. If there's any other top laners that were up
also.
here.
Toasty yet again high on this list. This man is just fighting. That's the takeaway that I'm getting from this.
Yeah, Jenkins, another top laner in the top 10. It was him and Surdy. They were the two top laners up there. So those guys, shout out. They're doing the top lane thing, but maybe not some of the other guys.
That's what's up.
Very our honorable. Last little player specific thing was some of the other numbers that I thought were fun. Most assists in 2024, no surprise, going to Chime, the support, one of the best supports in the league for one of the best teams in the league. And then the most highest monsters CS score was Shaden. Shaden actually farmed the most out of any jungler here. What I found the most funny about this is that Music, who only played 1 split, actually had more than Winnie, who played 2 splits. He was just behind him at 6.
I mean, hey, it's like 5 carry junglers, right? Like, Winnie, hey, he had some good games on like Zyra, Brand, Karthus in the summer split here and there, but generally a man that I am not surprised to see a shoe farming for psychotic plays. So I do think that sort of tracks. Music also gets credit for the promotion tournament as well. So there's that. But yeah, a lot of supports and junglers. Yet again, Shaden and Yuji are very far ahead in that monsters farm stat.
Yeah, a lot of games played, I think, is a big driver there, but also, you know, they're making sure that they're helping out and you know, scaling up, getting a lot of gold for their team. So yeah. Shout out to them.
Also Chime, Zyko,
Jungle.
Shaden, and Yuji are just the support and the jungler for the 2 best teams in the league all year.
That's another way to put it, I guess. Yeah. So, okay. Well, Hey, that was a little fun trip down memory lane. Of course, because these are total aggregate stats, they obviously rewarded the players who played 2 splits compared to 1. So somebody like, XU or Perry or something like that maybe didn't make the cut, even though they also had very admirable splits.
This
Tomo,
is
another name in there. So
in no way meant to be a meaningful statistical analysis, and
no.
rather a fun way to look at comically large numbers.
Yeah, I think our thought process going in was like find the funniest large numbers you can,
Like
and that's what we
23
did.
executes or 1,600,000 gold
damage.
spent on wards.
Yes, and while it was a good split, of course, for the NACL, we also wrapped up a really nice year on Salty Runback right here. If you're watching us on YouTube, which is where the primary audience for our podcast is, we got 37 episodes that we released with a lot of additional content pieces, over 12,000 views, over 70,000 minutes watched, 52 new subscribers. Overall, a great year for the channel, as I think we about doubled our viewership in general, like kind of over year to year.
Yeah, we blew our previous records out of the water. A really good year for us. We released more episodes this year. I also am realizing I think that 37 does not count this like technical last episode of season 2. So maybe 37.5. I guess it is 2025 now, so I don't know if it counts. January is like the grace month for Spotify Wrapped, right? So,
Something
or
like that,
I guess
yeah.
that's December, but
Low key, they kind of release it pretty early, so like your December numbers don't even make it up there either. So we're already doing better than them.
that's true. So, yeah, we did count our December numbers. That like one episode we released last month. I think the biggest thing, Grapes, is the 57 additional content pieces and the 70,000 minutes watched. That's a lot of time that people actually spent watching Salty Runback. If when I was looking at our analytics making this, our viewership obviously is not shattering any records in the grand scheme of YouTube, but we clearly have dedicated fans. We actually have really consistent viewership. I think it was like the average person was watching 25 minutes for each of our episodes, which is like insane. So, thank you to everyone that does that, that actually sits down and watches Salty Runback or listens. And then we did a lot of extra content this year. A lot of it was for Tier 3 tonight, but we also had things here and there for CLOL or that we just felt like making. And so sort of, I guess, continuing to dip our feet in different places aside from just the podcast proper.
Yeah, no, 100%. We can move on to some of our best episodes here. This is the
we had a generational
Spotify
run.
graphic. Yeah, this is the Spotify graphic where it pulls up like your 5 most listened to songs. These are our 5 most listened to podcast episodes here. All in the 60s. So the end of 2024 was pretty great for us here. I think what we've learned here is people like interviews, they like fun content pieces, and they like Brazil a lot.
The people like Brazil. We had legitimate titling and thumbnail strategies about how could we include Brazil in this while we were doing America's Challengers. And episode 63 worked very well. Bringing in guests definitely is a very popular thing for us, as the other 4 episodes all include other faces. Grapes, maybe the people don't watch this show just for us. Who would have thought, man?
No, well, I mean, yeah, we're hoping to do more, I think, interviews for this upcoming year, both, as part of the podcast and maybe some other content pieces that we have in store. Yeah. So if you like all
content
that,
when we actually don't have technical difficulties as well. Crazy.
The draft episode, finishing 3rd, that was one of our last ones that we put out there. That was a lot of fun. I know you missed out, but
I know.
And I don't think we ended up putting together very accurate rosters at the end of the day, but that was a fun time. And some of our in-person stuff did well too, with your NACL finals interview.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, getting to talk to those players in person. Seemed like they enjoyed it as well. I'm glad everyone enjoyed our like late season. It definitely helps that, this mid-60s was when like we're in sort of like playoffs and like LCS finals time. So everyone's kind of hyped about League as well. Like I'm sure there's a calendar component to it, but we had a lot of other great episodes. I can't think of any personal favorites off the top of my head right now, but I know we had some good ones here and there. Salt Street Vet's always a classic, for example. So, but yeah, these ones did really well. Hopefully we can continue to build upon that in 2025. But Grapes, what really made 2024 stand apart from our first year doing the channel was we are not just a podcast platform. We did content. You and I decided to put together, this is based on absolutely no scientific metrics whatsoever. we wanted to highlight what were our best content pieces throughout 2024. All 5 of them from Tier 3 tonight. All 5 of them absolute bops. We have the Rift Herald Driving School Cold Open, the Dancing with Your Uncle Sam, doing TikTok dances, Riverhawk Talk, specifically episode number 3, I think was the one that I picked, even though that's the thumbnail for episode 1, but the whole series definitely did really well. The Leaguepedia race, that caused me immense anxiety for about 12 minutes. And Frost Forest versus Auto Orange Jungle Clear compilation, which was just a really great banter, really, between 2 of our favorite players.
Yeah, I love the little fun skits that we got to do, like the little cold opens. Very unique show, Tier 3 tonight overall, as we had to deal with like a unique situation for the spring split of Tier 3. But I thought it was a fun way to go through that, and I think our cold opens were really fun to make. I also really love doing just like general league trivia stuff. That always makes me super happy. Whether it's the Leaguepedia race or the Immaculate Grid video, I was also a big fan of that one.
Yeah,
I was. And just I think getting to know the players a little bit more as well. We got to really sit down with them and do different things with them that weren't necessarily just question answer interviews, and I think that created for some really good content.
Yeah, I think I know I ran the numbers on this when Tier 3 tonight ended. I think we had 50 plus players and coaches involved in our content directly. On this list, we have 4 of the pieces directly involved players and coaches, which was super cool, with the Herald Driving School kind of being the one exception, but that one was just really fun, and we got to roast Frost Forest for that video, which was great. I know. For me specifically, the 2 that I sort of brought to the table on this were Riverhawk Talk and Dancing with Marty. And that was, I loved both these content pieces so much because they really just were about kind of getting the players in a casual setting to, sure, talk a little bit about the season, but mostly just kind of have fun, right? And I think that's something that has not happened enough in league content. And I think there's so many content ideas like that don't need to be forced and that can still be about league in some way, but are just completely off the wall. And so it's great.
Yeah, I hope we get to do some more of that in some capacity for next year as well. The last thing that we did was a lot of live streaming on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Salty Runback Pod. Not followed there, go check that out. We got to do stuff involving Tier 3 tonight, of course, the NACL Q streams in the summer on NACL 2, and then also our CLOL fundraise streams. Overall, over 11,000 minutes live. We gained over 1,000 followers on our personal channel, and on a relatively short budget throughout the year, which we were able to distribute to a ton of the production and talent that we also brought along for the ride. So it was a really successful year for us at Salty Runback, and something that we hope to do more of in the future, just making shows, making streams that people enjoy tuning into.
Yeah, we had that fat 9 subscribers to help us add to the budget, but yeah, I mean, very low budgets throughout the year. Most of this, Grapes, we did of both our own volition and blood, sweat, and tears. So much of this money, the reason why I kind of liked including it on the graphic, right, is because the vast majority of this actually went back to the community. People that helped us on our streams, which felt rewarding in that way. But my favorite is the 890 graphics aired. I went through every single one of our run of shows for Tier 3 tonight, and CLOL, and just counted graphics. Every single one, by the way, for some exceptions, almost every single one went through Leanne in some way. So shout out to Leanne for that. Either that, or Camcom put together some stuff with API that they built specifically for CLOL, a lot of like the head-to-head graphics, stuff like that. That was all, photo PSD files that they sort of converted to work in a spreadsheet. I don't even know how that works, but it happened, and it was amazing. Tons of people followed. We're I want to say above 1,700 followers on our Twitch channel now, which is absolutely outrageous. Like we actually have a following on Twitch when we go live, which is just brilliant. These live streams, while we got to do so much that would not have happened if I think people didn't believe in both the products that we do, or the work that we do, and then also want those products to exist. And so the fact that we got to bring those to the table was, in my opinion, Grapes, my favorite part of 2024.
Yeah, and I think all that to say, as we wrap up this episode, just a huge thank you to all of you once again. I mean, it was such a great season of League. Again, we had our ups and downs with, the CELO funding and then, the NACL queues not being fully streamed and things like that. But I think all of that, what I'm proud of is that we were able to take some of those things that we weren't necessarily super happy about, and we definitely voiced our opinions on this show. But we were able to turn it into something good for the people at home. And if you ever were a part of that, if you ever tuned into anything for us, please know that we are extremely grateful for you, and you hope you stick around for 2025. As we said, after this episode, we're gonna take a couple of weeks off to get ready for season 3, but we have a lot planned for season 3 that we're excited to announce for you guys once that day comes. We're not entirely sure the exact day, hopefully by like the middle to the end of the month, but I think it also is going to come down to when we get further news about the Open Qualifier tournament, the CELO season, and things like that. So just make sure you're tuned in, make sure you're followed on all of our socials, because as soon as any news comes about that, you'll be the first to hear it.
Yeah, just to reiterate the thank you one more time. If you were a part of Salty Runback in any way in 2024, whether you tuned in for a live stream, you watch or listen to our episodes, you were a player involved in content, or you worked with us, or so many other things here and there. You interacted with us, you asked us a question. I was very emotional and happy many times throughout this year to know that seemingly the community trusts us to be the bringers of so many stories here in North American Developmental League. We want to continue doing that for 2025. We intend on continuing to do that for 2025. And we're going to try to come back bigger and better than ever, as Grapes said. As you mentioned, stay tuned on social media at Salty Runback Pod, at Hawkcasts, at Speedy Grapes. You're not going to want to miss a moment. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not. And we'll be back in just a couple of weeks with perhaps a look you've never seen before. If you hated Salty Runback 2024, you can take everything we just said with a grain of salt. But you know what? You're going to love what we've got cooking no matter what. I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes. Thank you all for a tremendous 2024. A happiest of New Year's to you. A happiest of holidays to all of you and your loved ones. We'll see you all in just a couple of weeks for Salty Runback Season 3.